Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am so delighted to introduce you to my guest today, Ed Evarts. Ed is the founder and president of Excellius Leadership Development, a firm focused on helping successful leaders build their self-awareness so these leaders can self-manage more effectively. He is the author of Raise Your Visibility and Value and the forthcoming book, Drive Your Career. Please join me in welcoming Ed Evarts.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We're neighbors.
We are neighbors. not actual next door neighbors, but
no, but we're both in Massachusetts, and we're both coaches. So as you know, Work from the Inside Out, this podcast is all about all the different twists and turns that our careers take over the course of our careers. And I know that you've had a number of different pathways that your career has taken. And so take us back to some of the earlier years and tell us about some of the choices and decisions you've made along the way and how that led you to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I began my career once I graduated college. I went to the exciting campus of the University of Arkansas, as you can tell by my deep Southern accent. And I moved to Boston in 1984, and I entered into a career in retailing. Both my parents had been in retailing, so it was a very natural transition for me. And I did that for roughly about 17 to 18 years. I helped kill some of your favorite retailers, Jordan Marsh, Filene's, and Lechmere. And I played.
What kind of role were you in the retailing industry?
Yeah, I started on the merchandising end when I started to work at Jordan Marsh, which was my first retail opportunity. I got assigned to open a store in New London, Connecticut, so I moved to New London. And within a few months of just meeting all of the folks that came down to open a new store, so this was a new mall, a new store, merchants were there, administrative people were there, and then there was this crazy group of people called human resources, and I met some of them, and I said, you know what, I love retailing, but that's what I want to do in retailing. I want to do human resources. I want to help with placement. I want to help with training. I want to help people just be more successful in what they're doing. So I did the merchandising end for about a year and then transitioned to human resources. So I spent the bulk of my career in human resources in what I would call generalist roles. And so these are people who manage a variety of functions in HR, but only know so much. And so I could help with training, I could help with leadership development, I could help with recruitment, I could help with labor relations, but only to a certain degree. And then we would have to go to an expert to try to get them to help us even deeper. So I did that for a number of years. I worked at Jordan Marsh, and then I left there and I worked at Lechmere, and then I left there and I went to work at Filene's. And by the time I got to Filene's, I had two daughters who were young, and the hours in retailing are not great.
Even in the human resource function.
Oh, even in the human resource function, we day after Christmas we had to be back in the stores at 6 a.m. to help ensure the Trimetry people could get their Christmas merchandise at 50% off, and inventory and the holidays. We were assigned stores to work in to help just kind of as people power to help just keep the store running. And so the hours weren't great. And, I felt that I was kind of done with retail. And so I spent a couple of years looking for a new type of opportunity. I interviewed at a number of companies, and I landed a role at a company called Iron Mountain. And I started at Iron Mountain in 1998. And Iron Mountain was very similar to retailing. It was a highly non-exempt population, so hourly paid people versus exempt paid salaried people. It was a variety of locations across the country. So, very similar to a large retail entity that has a large number of non-exempt people working at locations across the country. So they liked people from retailing because they could understand how to work in those audiences. So I did that for about 10 years. It was a fantastic work experience. I loved doing all the work that I was doing. My role transitioned a few times at Iron Mountain. And near the end, I could feel the island getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So it wasn't a great surprise that my role was eliminated. But in the fall of 2007, my boss told me that my position was being eliminated and that I would be leaving at the end of 2007. And then in December of 2007, my boss spoke with me again and said that one of the HR leaders at a business unit had given her notice and was going to be leaving at the end of December. And would I stay for 6 months more and fill in for her while they figured out how to get that role filled? And of course, I said yes. And so I stayed until May of 2008 and left at that time. I would tell you, if you're ever going to get laid off from a company, the best time to get laid off is at the beginning of spring, because the world is being reborn and anything's possible. The negative was that it was a tough economic time.
I was going to say, yeah, it was 2008, right?
It was.
So what kind of just for I know what Iron Mountain is, but our audience may not know. So you said it was a fairly smooth transition from a retail environment to a company like Iron Mountain. And what kind of company was Iron Mountain?
Iron Mountain is a Boston-based organization. It's a multi-billion-dollar entity that does essentially records management. So back when I joined, most of the records that Iron Mountain managed were paper. And so there are large companies like Fidelity or Mercer that save everything, and they need to store it somewhere, and warehouse space can be very expensive. So they would pay someone to hold on to it. When I joined, about a year before, Iron Mountain purchased the largest data management company, which stored computer tapes. And so the audiences were a little bit different. On the paper side, it was attorneys and administrators. On the data side, it was IT folks and warehouse IT administrators, et cetera. So, and that was the entity I joined, was the data management side. But they essentially do data and records management, both warehousing and then also destruction. You might recall, back in 2008, a large accounting entity that went under because they destroyed records at a time that seemed inappropriate to be destroying those records. And that's what Iron Mountain does. It helps people know when to destroy records and destroy them at an appropriate time versus a suspicious time.
So from an HR point of view, it made perfect sense that you could transition from a retail environment to an environment like Iron Mountain. Even though they were technically in different industries, they were servicing, let's say, a similar employee pool in terms of the way that they operated, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a couple of lessons just, for the listeners that I think are relevant. My transition from retail to business services was helped on a couple of fronts. One of the HR leaders at Iron Mountain I used to work with at Lechmere.
Oh,
so I didn't know that till the day I was interviewing. I was looking at the mailboxes in the executive office area and I saw her name.
Oh.
So, having a colleague or somebody that that you can talk to, that you can vent with, that you can ask questions of, that you don't want to ask anybody else because you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're doing, whatever it might be, is extremely valuable. And I always encourage colleagues and clients to find a mentor or a colleague that they can have candid conversations with, because oftentimes what you're experiencing, others are experiencing. If you work for a boss that's hard to work with, it's not just you, it's others also are having a hard time. So, that was incredibly valuable.
Yeah, it's easy to go to that place of, oh, I'm the only one.
Right.
Very easily. And so it's a good reminder. I want to go back just for a moment because I'm anxious to go forward to
Sure.
where you are now. But I want to go back for a moment from Arkansas to, I guess you started in Connecticut. So just curious I'm curious what your undergraduate major was and how you landed from there to Connecticut.
So it's a similar story in respect to a colleague, although in this case it's a family member. I graduated the University of Arkansas with a business degree with a focus in marketing. and I went to work in retailing, and I worked for a couple of years in the Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee area
Oh, okay.
doing retail. And to make a much longer story short, I woke up one morning, went out, got in my car, turned it on, and my car caught on fire. And so I said, I think this is a sign I need to get out of here. So I called my sister, who was living in Boston at the time, and I was venting about it. And she said, Edward, I just bought a condo in Boston. It has 2 bedrooms. Why don't you come and move up here and find an opportunity? And I said, let's do it. So before Arkansas, we were from New York. So we had spent, I had spent the first 12 years of my life in New York City. So the Northeast was not unfamiliar to me.
Right.
So similar to going to Iron Mountain and knowing somebody who could help me beyond the normal help, here was a person who was willing to help me transition, et cetera. So I quit the job I had in Memphis and relocated to Arkansas. She was working at Filene's. They had a nepotism rule that you couldn't have family members working at the same company. So I went to interview and got hired at Jordan Marsh right across the street.
I remember Downtown Crossing, right?
Yeah, Downtown Crossing, staring at each other every day. And so it was, in reflection, it was an easy transition. I mean, I had a place to go, a place to land. I was living with a family member who could kind of watch my back. I fortunately landed an opportunity fairly quickly and, made it happen. They, my intent was staying in Boston, but they were opening up a store in New London, Connecticut. They came to our executive training meeting and asked if anybody wanted to go. I made the mistake of raising my hand and asking where New London was, and they said, "You're in." Going.
It's
left Boston.
I love the story though, because they're just the whole landscape of being a new graduate. You have a family history in retail, so a lot of people do sort of get move towards something that's familiar, an area that, or a profession that somewhat mirrors something they're familiar with. And then, and I think that sometimes I hear people say, "Oh, I don't have a network," or "I don't have these connections." And I think the connections sometimes are literally not just staring you in the face; they're almost in your face. And clearly, you had them right there in front of you. You went towards something that was familiar, and maybe it was something you also really liked a lot as well. And then through some connections and probably some serendipity, one thing kind of led to the other. I think sometimes when we unpack it, though, we realize, oh yeah, this is another version of networking. We call it networking, but it's really just how things naturally unfold for a lot of people. And yet, sometimes job seekers or people who are trying to transition do think that it's some big daunting process, when in fact it might be a very natural process of just things unfolding as you have, a conversation with your sister where you say, my car just caught on fire and I'm kind of fed up and trying to figure out what's next. Well, why don't you just come move here?
That's right.
Right?
Well, I think you're talking a little bit, Tammy, about something you and I both do a lot, which is helping people better manage the context of their situation. Most people are, we say we're our own worst critics, and we really are.
Yes.
Nobody knows us better than we do. And we tend to say, I'm not good at this, or I can't do this, or they don't want to do this. And it's all very negative, unhelpful perspectives. And the work that you do and the work that I do is helping people reframe that context about what is working and what can work and what your strengths are, and really helping them just burst through those stereotypes. I love the word serendipity. I've become a huge fan of serendipity since I converted from corporate to coaching, because time and time again, something has happened that I didn't anticipate or was better than I thought. And the feeling I have always had is that it was serendipity, that, there's a reason. And I think a part of it was because I had a more positive, future focused perspective than a negative, past focused reality.
I want to piggyback on that a little bit, because when I say serendipity, or I hear someone say, "Oh, I was just lucky." Yes. And with a positive perspective or an openness to those events and those things that kind of show up in our path. You have to be open to those things in order to step into them, right? So when sometimes I hear someone say, "Oh, it was serendipity," or "I was lucky," it's almost as if they're taking the power or the control out of their own hands. When in fact, I believe very strongly that we have to step into those things and have to take advantage of them when they show up. So there is an element of control in our own hands to those things. Like you had to accept your sister's invitation to move north, right?
Yeah, and similar to that, I completely agree with that perspective about where the power lies. And another example is, if I ask somebody what they're going to be doing this week, they'll say they're going to a particular networking event. And I say, that's great. Why are you going? And if they say something like, well, it can't hurt, or why not? I say, no, that's not the reason that you're going. You have to be more present as to why you're going. What are the top 3 things that you're going to achieve? How are you going to make it work for you, right? Don't just go because it seems like a great idea or you're not doing anything else that night, because that's not how you live the rest of your life. You don't do things just, hey, why not? But when you've got a goal in mind, which is finding a new opportunity or transitioning to a new role, give yourself the authority, the power, and the permission to do things purposefully.
Right. Yeah. And I think when you do things that way, you step into those situations with more confidence and a sense of purpose. And you're going to experience that event or that opportunity very differently as a result. Right.
It is. Right. And presence is a challenging word in leadership coaching these days because everybody wants more executive presence, but nobody knows how to define it.
Right.
And so through my experience, just really coming up with my own perceptions of presence based on the people that I work with. And one of the key areas of presence that I think people need to have is that I'm here for a reason. So if it's a meeting, if it's a networking event, this call that we're having today, whatever it is, I'm here for a reason. I'm not just here because I don't have anything better to do or I'm just lucky, but I'm here for a reason, and I need to embrace that and get whole with that belief so I can be the best me I can be.
Yeah. And sometimes the reason you went into it for and how it turns out may be different, and that's fine too, right? So you go in for a reason. It's not about having a crystal ball and predicting what will happen. It's about just having some sense of purpose stepping in, but still allowing whatever serendipity or luck or whatever shows up once you're in there to happen. And you might step out of there saying, well, I came in here with one purpose and look at all the things that came out of it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So it can be quite magical, Ed, don't you think?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't have a magic wand, but sometimes magic can happen.
And that's the way it should be, Ed.
That's right.
That and I'm sure you recall the blueberry muffins from Jordan Marsh.
I do. They're still made at the furniture store in Avon, Massachusetts. I won't name their name, but the big furniture store down in Avon bought the recipe.
I know the furniture store you mean.
They bought the recipe and they make those fantastic Jordan Marsh blueberry muffins.
I just had to mention the blueberry muffins when you said that you couldn't work at the same store your sister did. I thought, well, at least you got to work where they made the blueberry muffins. That's for the benefit of all the people who don't live in Boston.
That's right.
So, but back on track here, Ed. So Iron Mountain, that was a really good run for you, and then that came, and all good things do come to an end.
Mm-hmm.
What happened once you were done with Iron Mountain?
So as I mentioned, I left on May 31st, 2008, and I decided to take a month off just to put my feet up and enjoy life. If I told you that the month went by in like a blink of an eye, I would be not exaggerating. It just flew by. So I decided to take the summer off And my wife's a teacher, so she also had the summer off.
Oh.
And so we had some really nice 3-day weekends. I needed to find a job, so it wasn't like I took the whole summer off. But, I decided, Tammy, that I wanted to do something different, that I wasn't loving corporate America. I felt very underaccomplished. So while we did a lot at Iron Mountain, produced a lot and did a lot, I still felt underaccomplished in respect to really key human resource initiatives. And so I decided to think about starting my own business, and I started to network. So I talked with a friend who put me in touch with a coach, and that's what started the whole networking avalanche. And I started to I met him. I can still remember that conversation. And he said, Ed, anytime you meet with somebody, always end the conversation with who are 2 other people I could meet that you would recommend. And he did that. And I just did the whole summer interviewing and talking with folks. And I found 99% of the coaches that I met with were very open and candid, and shared everything that they thought I needed to know in order to make a good decision. And I told my wife by September that I would either make a decision, open my own practice, or go back to a corporate job. And I told her that I was going to open my own business. So nothing I heard in those networking conversations led me to believe that I couldn't be very successful at this. So, in fact, it helped build my confidence that if I could make the turn, and the turn is that kind of financial window where you're not making any money to now making money, that if I could make that turn with the support of my beloved spouse, that, this would work. And so she said, let's do it. And I did it. And it took a few years to stabilize. And, here we are today.
So that was a little over 12 years ago, right?
11
years.
2008.
Yeah.
So 2000, I got a very nice severance package from Iron Mountain. So that helped a lot.
Sure.
That provided me the space to take my time and figure out how to do it the best that I could. I opened a website in April of 2009, and I wanted to have a website, more as kind of an online package, because I thought if I was going to be selling leadership coaching into companies who had nice websites, they would expect I would have a nice website. So, whether it was nice or not, I don't know, but it was a website. And so really April of 2009 is when I kicked off my business formally in the marketplace. And which, if anyone doing the math realizes that's a year of networking and connecting. As I said, the economy was terrible. And, that provided me the opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do. I attended a coach training school.
Oh, you did?
So,
okay.
Yeah, I did. I wanted to demonstrate to the market that I was committed to coaching, that I just wasn't an HR leader in transition, and that, I would stay if an opportunity arose and not leave at some point because I now have a job and I have to go.
Right.
And so I did that, which I think was great, and, have continued on.
So there are a number of things that you did as part of this transition. And when I talk to people about their transitions, they're usually telling me about it. It's all in retrospect. So it sounds like this kind of smooth process or smooth line. And I know that it wasn't all smooth for you, that there were, some maybe some emotional ups and downs or difficult discussions along the way for you. But yet the process that you went through included a number of key pieces. You had to have your spouse's support. It sounds like that was critical. You had a significant number of networking conversations. You made some significant connections along the way to really kind of test your ideas and get some of your thoughts together around how you would form this and what would make sense to go forward with. And you also went and got some coaching training to also solidify that part of your skill set, but also to develop further credibility for yourself. And rather than just say, hey, I'm an HR professional, isn't that enough kind of thing. What were some of the other key elements, would you say, were the things that really lent themselves to you establishing yourself as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So you mentioned one of them, which is spousal support. And anytime that you're transitioning your role, and especially where you're going from a corporate job where you're getting paid every other week on a regular basis to a consulting job where your pay is like a roller coaster ride and you might be a full quarter without any income, you need spousal support, right? If your spouse is looking at you across the breakfast table saying, I need you to get a job, your likelihood for success is less. So I had that. You also have to have a good financial foundation to work from. So, if you've got no money in the bank, it's going to be very hard to transition to a consulting role than if you're in a stronger financial situation. So those two were in place. And so that was critical. You mentioned, and you were kind enough to mention earlier, the book I had written, Raise Your Visibility and Value. And so, I not only wrote the book for others, but I also want to be a role model for it. And so I do a number of things to raise my visibility in the marketplace to ensure that when somebody needs a coach, they may not need it when I'm selling it, but 6 months from now, they're going to say, wow, we need to get so-and-so a coach. My name is in the top of their head.
Right.
A few other things that I did was I got on the board and was president of the International Coach Federation of New England. So there's a large global coaching affiliation group. They have regional offices. And so I said to myself, Ed, you really need to get known in the industry. And what better way to do that than to be president of the firm, right? Of the affiliation group. So I did that. As you mentioned, I wrote my book. That was a kind of a lifelong objective. That was really even something I thought about doing before I became an
okay.
So I was really excited to be able to do that. As you mentioned, I've written a second book that's going to come out this March called Drive Your Career. And those specifically are stories that I share, 9 stories that I share with people that I believe they can use in order to be more of a driver of their career. A lot of people are passengers of their career. They're in a role or a situation and they're really enjoying the ride. But at some point, it's now in their hands and they don't know what to do or where to go or even how they got there. And so, I'm hoping to help that. And then like you, I, in December of last year, started a podcast. So I'm doing a weekly podcast called Be Brave at Work. And it's speaking with business professionals in transition, consultants, independent providers, talking about what bravery in the workplace means to them and stories they can share of how they either were brave or weren't brave and what the impact was on them and what they learned from it.
That's very exciting. So there's a lot of resources and materials that we will make sure are in all the show notes so that people can access those. And Ed, you bring such a depth of experience between your corporate experience and now your, the last 11 years of coaching and leadership development experience and executive development experience with you. It's there's just so much you have to offer people, both on the individual level, and I also know that you also work with teams as well. Mm-hmm. So that's just a whole nother layer and level where you offer tremendous value to people.
As we like to say, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's true. That's true. So, so your book, Drive Your Career, that's coming out in March or April. That feels like it's right around the corner.
It is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Time can fly, very quickly. So, I'm excited about that. But, the real thing, Tammy, is, I'm excited to do it, but I'm more excited about the benefit it can provide people who take a risk and make a choice and purchase it and buy it. And, these are 9 stories that came out of experience working with people over the last 11 years, mm-hmm. things that I would share or that they would experience on a recurring basis. And so, these aren't just one-time things that happened in 2011, but again and again and again, things that seem to be important in order to be more of a driver of your career and, a little bit less of a passenger. So.
It sort of feels like it fits right in with this podcast too,
It does.
Right? If you're driving your career, you're probably doing it more from the inside out. If
you are doing it from the inside out.
If you're a passenger, you're probably doing it from the outside.
You are, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people need to take a little time, and I know that you do this work as well, to self-reflect
Yes.
As I tell people as a leadership coach, my number one goal with them, regardless of who they are or what level they're at or what company they work at, is to help them build their self-awareness on how others experience them so they can manage it better. And,
Right.
everybody has pluses and minuses. A lot of people who are getting coached think they have more minuses than others, and that's not the case. But everybody has pluses and minuses, and you need to know how to use your pluses and also manage around your minuses. And,
Right.
Great leaders would tell you, like the Bill Gates of the world, that I have a number of minuses and I've hired people to do them.
Right.
They're just not great at it. So,
Right. Right.
it's not like you have to carry it all and do it all, but you can create a matrix of ways to help you make great progress.
Absolutely. And those qualities, that self-knowledge helps us to move through our transitions as well. Those are the things that are important to know about ourselves in the workplace, but also when we know those things as we move through a transition, we know when and how to ask for help along the way.
Right, right. And this is a highly under-investigated area. I mean, there's no high school class, there's no college class that says, we're going to talk about you. What your strengths and weaknesses are, where your areas of interest are. We want to build your self-awareness so that you can navigate more effectively. And we graduate, we're thrown into the workplace. We try to do the best job we can every day. Most of us get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, hey, have a great day.
Right.
And we go off to try to be the best us. And yet there are some things that we do that may not be great. And we don't see them. They may be a blind spot or something nobody has told us about. And, once we know about them, our likelihood to manage them is greater.
Well, that's why, Ed, that's why you and I are here.
That's it.
That's why we're here. So, is there, in closing out here, Ed, is there anything that you can share with our listeners as a closing note, something that you would say would be a key piece of advice for people who are thinking about what's next for them or how they can navigate their way through to the next thing?
Sure. Yes. So, and I'm going to share with you a piece of advice that I got at Iron Mountain from the boss who I worked for as I was exiting. And, we were very caught up at Iron Mountain trying to be perfect. And when you're perfect, oftentimes things don't get done. And so she would say to me on a repeated basis, Ed, progress is better than perfection, because we can always go back and fix or adjust things that didn't go perfectly well, but make progress. Don't worry so much about perfection. And so that's what I would share with you. And that's what I would share with others as you're thinking about your career, as you're thinking about where you are, as you're thinking about your next steps. Make progress, even if it's a baby step. So if there's if you're in an industry and you're not a member of any affiliation groups and you don't know, what to do or where to go, just look online for a meeting and just go.
Yeah.
And, make progress. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everyone in the room, etc. But when you make that progress, that's when you create opportunities for serendipity.
Love it. And Ed, what's the best way for people to find you and learn about your work?
You can go to my website, which is excellius.com, and that's EXCELLIUS.com.
Great.
Or you can email me at ed@excellius.com, or you can call me at 617-549-1391.
Wonderful. Well, Ed, thank you so much. I love your story and I appreciate your insights. And we will have all of this information in the show notes. Best of luck to you with the launch of your second book. And thanks so much again for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Tammy. I greatly appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ed Evarts. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his professional path to where he is today. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 062. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Ed, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find through my website at www.tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button or follow the instructions provided there. Thanks so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.